Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Dominant Dealer podcast presented by Drivably. We have a special guest today, and Mr. Mike Cavanaugh, Executive Vice President from Max Digital. Mike spent about 45 minutes with us talking about all topics from growing up, big things that impacted his life, his relationship with his dad, service time in the Marines, his deployments in Iraq, how those things have translated into the car business, his passion for the car business, and more importantly, all the tips and tricks that are going to make dominant dealers successful for the coming years. So, had a blast with Mike. Probably could have talked to him for hours, and hope you enjoy it. Everybody who's listening, want to welcome Mr. Mike Cavanaugh to the show. And from my perspective, he is a I don't know if you're a borderline celebrity. I think you're probably like all-in celebrity from my perspective. I think you have you're approaching 40,000 followers on LinkedIn. So that's a big deal. Where I'm from, I would consider you I think you're one of the coolest guys to hang out with just based on your background. I have a high affinity towards anybody who's been in the military. And we were talking about it earlier. Thank you for your service. But
Thank you.
I'd love for you to just get give everybody the high notes. I mean, I'll sit over here and just drool on your background, but I'd rather you do that and me not look like a fool.
Well, very, very humbled. Thanks for the intro. So I grew up in the car business. My dad was in the car business as well. So, started as early as a little kid, working on cars with my dad. And, there's a little kid holding the orange shop light while he worked on cars, and then got into the dealership business and selling cars, beside my dad as well. And, pretty much that was what I did as a kid. I went to school, played some sports, and was in the car business. Took a break, went to the Marine Corps, did 2 tours in Iraq. Awesome experience. Learned a lot, took away a lot of discipline from that experience. Got back, went right into the car business, almost simultaneously was going to school full-time while I was working full-time at a dealership. So I went to Northwood University, great school in the industry, learned another massive amount of things over there, met some incredible people. Spent time at a publicly traded company, Credit Acceptance. Again, blessed to have met some of the sharpest, best business people that I could have hoped to work alongside over there. Got my MBA from Northwood while I was working at Credit Acceptance, and then took over as the chief operating officer of a dealer group, very fast-growing dealer group named Cartwright, after I left Credit Acceptance. And we took that from probably about 7 stores to 28 stores in under 3 years. So worked an insane amount doing that, and learned more than I could have probably ever hoped to learn or wanted to have learned through that experience. Was great. And after that, I took over as the executive vice president here at Max Digital, software company serving dealers across the country. We work with some of the largest dealer groups in the country and, single point dealers as well. And we do everything from inventory management, merchandising, digital retailing. So I've just got a really great chance to learn a ton about the industry that I love and continue to learn every day.
Mike, amazing story. I'm not gonna lie, I'm literally exhausted from hearing everything that you've done. Like, I feel like would you, like, when you look back at it now, like, is your stint, do you consider like your stint in the Marine Corps like the lightest work-life balance you've ever had? Like, has it only gotten worse? Like, where does that compare? Like, naturally the stresses are different. I don't want to conflate
Right.
it. I think that is, but I would love to know how you think about that in retrospect. Like, is life crazier now? The craziness is probably different, but just I'd love to understand kind of where that sits.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say I grew up with 2 parents that worked a ton. My dad, was in the car business, so he was bell to bell. He was gone early in the morning, came back late at night, worked, on the weekends as well. My mom did the same thing. So I don't think I would have saw my dad if I wasn't in the car business right alongside him at a young age. And he's, my best friend now. So I consider it a good, a joy, so to speak, to have gotten to work with him over time. But that was the example that I had in my life. You work, right? Like, you can be the smartest guy in the room, and that's not going to make you successful. You can have the greatest ideas. That's not going to make you successful. But, hard work is something that you can control all the time. And that was the example that my mom and dad set for me. So actually, the Marine Corps was kind of a break. My parents were both very strict. I had to do all the chores around the house and work and all that. So when I went to the Marines, there was a lot of people that had kind of a whiplash and thought it was incredibly hard. And, oh my gosh, I have to make my bed and, do push-ups. But it was boot camp kind of was easy, being alone and away from your family, deployed, obviously overseas. That was a challenging piece, but I loved every minute of it. I loved the camaraderie, the challenge of it. And then, 9/11 happened right after I joined the Marine Corps. So I thought I was going to live in California and get paid to go, shoot guns and work out and, live in nice weather. And, that changed like a month after I joined. And my path was quite different than I thought it would be.
I want to make a subtle transition back to the car business. And actually, I want to understand a little bit more about your dad. My father wasn't in the car business, but I actually grew up on a farm. And I think a lot of my work ethic about what a day is supposed to be like is from those earliest memories of being a little kid of you said bell to bell, sunrise to sunset. For my dad, I can remember him, being out the door, and I wouldn't see him all day and he'd come back just covered in everything. Right. I'd love to get the 5 to 10-year-old version of Mike and what the impression of watching your father doing that every day and what it did to you.
Right. So, when I was a kid, he would get up in the morning and go to the dealership probably before I was, at school even. And then he wouldn't come home until late at night. And I can remember most kids would go to bed at, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I would get to stay up, till 9. So I would actually get to spend time with my dad. We'd eat dinner late. Yeah. Summertime, I'd go to work with my dad every day. Starting as like a 10-year-old kid, I would go to work with him every day, bell to bell. Because my mom worked 6-7 days a week herself. So I worked with my dad from a young age, 40 plus hours a week. Even during the school year on Saturdays, that was my job. Once I got into wrestling season, we had tournaments on Saturdays usually. But other than that, it was Saturdays I got to work with my dad. So I got to learn the car business from the bottom up and that work ethic. My dad made sure that he put me in the hardest jobs that nobody wanted to do, scrub the shop floor with a push broom and Dawn dish soap and clean up the tires behind the building and clean the bathroom and, pick up the trash on the lot. And I got to do everything that nobody else wanted to do for, a fraction of the money. So, it humbled me. And I think humility is a great trait that my dad instilled in me and continues to this day.
Yeah, there's some lax, you're just getting paid cash, right? I don't think child labor laws, you could work by 10, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, I think it was he could have called it volunteering, at the time. He probably gave me, $10, $20 a day. I can't remember now, but I can remember always having money in my pocket as a kid. And I think that was something that I liked, is I didn't mind working because he did give me, a reward, so to speak, for that work. I wasn't just expected to do it for free. So I liked being able to, buy a pair of sneakers when I wanted them, or, being really little buying Legos. And most 10, 11-year-olds don't have a job, but I definitely had a little more freedom to do what I wanted to do because I had some income.
Yeah, I could just imagine you walking into a toy store, right, and you buying some Legos and pulling out a wad of cash, being like, dude, is this kid slinging crack? What's going on?
Flipping it out, right? Yeah, man, yeah.
No big deal. That might Cavanaugh, hook you up. I think I saw it in your background that you had a couple stints in the startup entrepreneur game. One, I'd love for you to confirm that for me if that actually happened, and if it did, I'd love to get what lessons did you learn in that arena that have transferred well into more traditional corporate environments, even now with Max Digital.
Yeah, so I will confirm that for sure. So I started up a couple different businesses over time. Went on to be very successful businesses, sold the business the second time and kind of parted ways with my partner very graciously, but went on to pursue things in the automotive industry with my first venture. Wildly different businesses, but both businesses that were geared around helping people. One, doing urban farming, teaching people how to farm in urban environments. And that's kind of something that has been near and dear to my heart, in Detroit. I don't know how aware a lot of people are, but there was a time where there was, only like 3 grocery stores for hundreds of thousands of people. So access to fresh produce was like non-existent. Diabetes was incredibly high in the city because people just didn't have access to healthy food. So it was something that I was pretty passionate about, was helping people get access to, fresh fruits and vegetables. We take it for granted if you have a relatively good life, you live in a decent area, that we have unlimited healthy food, and it's more of a choice than it is anything else that we have access to that. So that was my first venture. My second business was more along the lines of, holistic cures for people that have kind of ailments or issues that come back from military service. So whether you're, in any branch you've been deployed, Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, it didn't matter. But we found ways, natural remedies for people, counseling. We did skill building and, help people find jobs that hadn't found jobs. We did pantries for homeless veterans. And we did one event a month to take veterans to, some kind of event, whether that was a Tigers game, whether that was a big barbecue, but we did things like that. And, so I had a lot of good lessons learned from that. But I think the biggest takeaway was you got to find a purpose for what you do, and you don't care how much you work. It doesn't feel like work. You feel like you're on a mission. And personally, with both of those things, I worked an insane amount. I worked a full-time job during both those stints and had a company also. So there was days that I would work until 3, 4 in the morning and get up at 6, 7 in the morning and do it all over again. Every day, and work on the weekends, put in 15, 16 hours on Saturday and Sunday, because I was passionate about what I was doing, and I had a very supportive family at the time that believed in the mission too. So I think, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to start a business, if you're going to do something that you really believe in, not just like, hey, I think we can make a quick buck on this, but like, we're really going to make an impact on a certain industry, a certain, group of people, a certain geographic area, whatever it is, like have a purpose and have a mission and get the people that you work with rallied around that. And no matter how much you work, no matter how hard it is, it's fun. And it's like, it's even a word that I would say beyond fun, but it gives you like meaning to your life. And I know that's kind of deep for the podcast, but that's just a lesson that I learned.
No, man, that's what we're all about here. I mean, I feel like before we got on the phone, I felt like I had a good read on who you were as a person. You're confirming all that, but now you're going from like celebrity status to like sainthood, like someone here. Like, I feel like, are you going to make a run at like Illinois state politics? I feel like you could do some cleaning up. You might be the guy.
No, definitely not. I'd stay away from that arena. With all that I have in me, I have no interest in doing that.
Yeah. Well, that's probably why you're the guy for the job, Mike. I'll get the campaign banners. I'd love to know, like, what's the hot thing going on with Max Digital right now? Like, where are you spending most of your time from a market perspective, like new products, etc.? I'd love to hear about all the exciting stuff going on.
Yeah, so from a market perspective, our newest product's getting ready to launch here at NADA. We put a ton of time, effort, and energy into our newest product, Max BDC. And this is a collaborative tool that's used for, BDCs to collaborate with the customer, to collaborate with the salespeople on the showroom floor, and salespeople to collaborate with the customer, so that there's really a link in what's going on. And it's not as simple as like the CRM. I see the notes, I see what's going on. It's a truly, immersive experience where the consumer can see, the details on the vehicle down to the, packages, options, all of those details that they're looking for the car. Obviously the pictures of the vehicle, they can, appraise their trade alongside the BDC member right there so that they can see that. They can estimate their payments. They really get a clear view of the market to tell, is this a fair deal? Not just, good deal, great deal, fair deal, but like, let me see the other vehicles that are similar in the market and how does this compare? They can do all this. They can create a customer board of the couple different vehicles they're looking at. And then the BDC agent, the customer can share that together. Any changes that are done on either side, they can see it. They share that with the salesperson. So now when the customer shows up, they've got probably a halfway done deal or more, where the salesperson and the management at the store understands, what's their credit like, what kind of payment are they looking for. They can see the different vehicles that they looked at, that they were interested in. They can have an appraisal or a trade estimate already in hand. And this is something that I just did a video on this about CarMax's Q3 earnings call, and they invested a ton of time, effort, energy, money into what they called CRM enhancements to really accomplish the same thing. So I think they're always a good gauge in our industry to look at of, if they're making a change, if they're going down a certain road, it's likely a good idea. And because they're a publicly traded company that has earnings calls, you can get insight into, is it working? Is it not working? How should you approach it? So we started working on this prior to knowing what CarMax was doing here, but it really was a good kind of indication, like, all right, this is going to work. This is a good route to go. So we're excited to launch this at NADA and show dealers what this is all about.
I mean, I don't think you can get much better of a tailwind than that. Probably after you guys have invested 18 months and who knows how much dollars for someone like to say, yeah, you guys are on the right move. Was there you guys have a full suite of products. Like, was there a particular problem or just an area that customers kept coming back to as what was the tipping point for this? Or was this more of just like hey, you guys were forecasting, this is where we need to be? I'd love to know how you guys decided that this is where time and effort needed to be focused.
Yeah, great question. So we've been following, the digital retail space for a long time, and we've been in kind of the sales enablement or, salesperson enablement space for, over 5 years. Before anybody talked about digital retailing or any of these other tools that were out there, we were already playing in this space with a tool that we had called Digital Showroom, which is still a tool that's used widely across, hundreds of dealers in the US. And before we got into this really like digital retail, omni-channel space, we really wanted to wait and see because we're really in the business of not trying to sell dealer software that, they don't use, right? We wanted to provide a value not only to the dealer, but also to the consumer. So we saw a lot of tools came out. I mean, at one time, I think I was watching or listening to a Brian Pash podcast and looking at some of the information that he posted, and there was 30 plus vendors in the digital retail space, and there probably still is in some degree. But when you looked around the space for dealers that were successful, that were using these tools, that were actually making an impact on their business, a real tangible, measurable impact on their business, they were few and far between. So we knew that, kind of the approach of, buy now and, click a button to do this on the website wasn't as simple as that. I've always been a fan of saying, computers or software alone doesn't sell cars, right? It's a tool and it has to be a process. So we try to design software that would help facilitate a good process and enable salespeople, BDC agents to better serve customers versus kind of the silver bullet, which sounds good in concept of, buy now and I can kind of take my hands off and that's it. So we arrived at that. And we tested this with thousands of consumers over the last 18 months. We made tons of iterations on the product. This, did it answer the questions that they wanted? What was missing? What did we need to add? Where should, certain information be? I mean, down to the color, the font, like everything. We got just an amazing amount of feedback from thousands of consumers before we launched it, which some would probably say is overkill, but it ended up coming up with a pretty impressive tool that I'm excited for a lot of folks to see.
You've seen a lot of trends over the last, your entire career. Like, what are the ones that you think get too much attention? And what are some of the trends that you think people need to be investing in the car space anyway?
That's a really, really good question. Let me think about that a little bit. I would say there's a lot of statistics that are published by organizations that we're all aware of, right? They've got great, market awareness. And I think we always have to be mindful of what the motive of that organization is to publish the stat or the information that's out there. So I think trends and statistics can be used to help support anyone's motive. And that's in our industry and other industries and politics, whatever that may be. So I would always say to try to look at any stat or any trend from, the source, where's it coming from, and what's their motivation to paint this picture for me? Because oftentimes statistics and trends can be used to help fuel somebody else's business and can create problems in an industry, in a country, in whatever it may be, because they get people believing that something is coming that maybe wouldn't have come if they hadn't changed people's opinions. And so I think there was, doom and gloom for years. Like, we're waiting for the economy to crash. We're waiting for, values of vehicles, to just fall out the bottom. Like, all these things were supposedly, imminent and were going to happen, and they still haven't happened yet. So I think with any trend, it's, the best test is kind of your own market litmus test. Pay attention to what's going on in your own market with your own customers, and talk to people. Talk to the people doing the work. Talk to your customers. They're going to tell you what's going on. I think too often we rely on reports and emails and updates from other people, but we don't one-on-one talk to people. You can find out so much on what trends are actually happening in your market by talking to the actual people in your market. And it's lost, right? We text each other now. We don't talk to each other on the phone as much. It's hard for people to look each other in the eyes when they talk to each other now, even because we're so used to looking down at our phone. And it's, I think some of this stuff sounds like common sense, but it's some of the brightest people that I know have given me this advice.
Yeah. So what I heard was most overhyped is statistics from bad actors potentially, or questioning their motives, and the other trend that people should take advantage of is doing more grassroots understanding of what's really going on before coming to their own conclusion.
Look at some of the best used car operators in the country, and you'll see that when everybody else was talking doom and gloom, they were focused on how can I capitalize on the situation myself. And they just constantly refine their business, their industry, their acquisition standards. So when we were talking about margin compression, these guys were looking at, how do I acquire more vehicles from consumers? How do I find sources to acquire inventory that nobody else is using right now? When everybody else was still going to the auction, bidding against the same dealers on the same cars every month, these guys were trying to find new and different ways to increase their margin. There's plenty of examples of this across the country, and I think, you need to look at those people. And the reason I'm such a big active LinkedIn person is because I learn a ton daily from people like this. So I think, don't be afraid to look from outside sources other than those emails that you get from the vendors you do business with every month, or, the economic reports that you can download from some major vendor. They paint a picture that may not be as accurate as you think it is.
No, you bet. I think one of the rules I try to live by when it comes to those things is find the information to confirm or deny your assumptions. If that's your kind of your fallback when you get anything, like you're usually going to be in a good spot, and you'll tend to figure out what is BS right away when you hear it. It really helps the kind of your logic around that.
Right.
What you kind of presented some of it there, but like, in current days, let's say 2020 through 2023, really what is going to be the thing that separates, the average dealerships from the dominant dealers? And it might be some of the things you already talked about, but if you could put that in a bow, what would maybe those one or two things be?
So good question. I think, we're going to see a ton of consolidation in the industry as well. We're going to see, the bigger groups buy up, other big groups buy up small groups, and, the single point stores. I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation still as the economy gets more challenging, as the business gets more challenging, more expensive. We're going to see people continue to, get gobbled up, consolidation. And I think we'll see some large groups start to have some more significant market share across the country. I think the folks that get very intelligent with inventory acquisition on the used side, right? That's going to be a major differentiator. And I think, on the consumer facing side, voice is going to become more and more prevalent. So the people that really get that strategy figured out and become less reliant on kind of some of the I won't call them stale, but the status quo ways of driving traffic to their business, the people that get ahead of that, whether that's driving traffic for new cars, used cars, service business, I think those people will separate themselves. Technology is going to become a big factor in this. and the people that can kind of create or augment their salespeople with technology and make them more collaborative, I think will succeed as well. I don't think we're going to see in the next 3 years where the majority of cars are sold online. I do think we'll see more and more start online. But I think the people that win will be able to, start a deal very well online and finish it more efficiently with a better experience, in store and in some cases at the home or the office.
All big stuff there. I'm resisting my urge to talk better ways to acquire inventory. We'll save that another day. The sales guy in me wants to jump out of my shoes, but hey, we'll hold off there. Who is the when you have to think about people you're working with or clients you're trying to bring on, like who is a dominant dealer that comes to mind? And I'm asking you that because whoever you name and shout out, we're going to send them some Drivably swag. Everybody's trying to get our orange shirts. We'll send them some hats, but we'll also give them a couple months free of our latest release to give it a shot. So be selfish in your shout outs right now, whatever's going to help you the most.
Wow. I'll kind of give you, the top 5 groups that I see that are probably most innovative in the space. And I think, the Luther organization, that's up in Minnesota and has some presence in Arkansas as well. Nick Johnson, Andy Gadian over there, those guys do a phenomenal job. I'm truly impressed by everything that they do, and they're always innovating on different things. I think the Lithia organization, obviously they're one of the largest dealer groups in the country. They continue to grow probably faster than most dealer groups in the country. They're always coming up with new and innovative ways to do things over there. The Hendrick organization has been great to work with. And, most recently I've spent more and more time with the K-Lig organization down in the San Antonio area. And Bob Terrell over there is their used car guru. He does a phenomenal job and is excellent at what he does. So I'd say that's probably my top list there.
It's pretty good. No names I've ever heard of. Just
right. Sure.
Those are great call-ups. Well, Mike, I think that's probably a good spot to end. Give you about 5 minutes back. Can't thank you enough for the time. I mean, the stuff you shared was awesome. Hopefully you had a good time. And
I did.
Don't feel like it was a waste of your time.
No, it was great, man. Thanks. Happy to talk anytime, man. Had a great time.